forward, I just wanted to just there's something just came out of the within this week. I don't know if you guys have read about it. It's about remote working. It's going to be legalized. So I don't know anyone's read about that or anything like that. Is anyone?
What do you mean? I thought remote working was always. Yeah, go on. I think Cam had something.
Yeah, I was just gonna. I read the article. I think it's not that it's going to become legal. I think that was just basically. I think that was an idea that was a suggestion that was thrown up in their discussions about what to do going forward after the lockdowns lifted. But as far as that being law, that hasn't been debated in Parliament. Nothing like that has been laid out. So it's not even at that stage. It only is just a suggestion.
Yeah, but what you guys think though?
I haven't read the article, but I wonder how it's laid out, because when you mention the word about it's going to become legal, then I wonder what that actually means, because I thought remote working has always been at the hands of the actual companies, because as I said, regarding this remote working, other companies have been using this ages ago. There are companies in Belgium that have workers in this country that the only access that they have is virtually, and they work together in teams and stuff like that. So when we say it's going to become legal, I wonder what those conversations were around, what the actual or some of the options that were spoken about in that article were.
Well, from my understanding, when I was reading the article, is when they are going to discuss for it to be legal, is some companies, as we discussed last time on our previous episode, some companies are stuck in the old ways, if that makes sense. So when an employee want to raise the situation, they shouldn't be penalized, if that makes sense. So penalized in the sense that they shouldn't be getting sacked or referral or anything like that. They should just grant it and they understand. As long as they've got a body for them to able to work, they've got an environment at home where it's comfortable, they can get the work done. And making sure that they can remote, because for example, the reason why I brought it up is, perfect example, my missus. At this moment, she's looking to go back to work. The company that she works for, they're quite old in the old system. They're quite stuck in the old system. So the reason why they're quite stuck in the old system is mainly the CEO. The CEO doesn't like to move, like have changes. So this kind of law system, if it is granted, I think it will benefit the company, because as a company that employs over 100 plus staff, right? First of all, they need to have a remote working. You can't expect a whole 100 staff to be stuck in an office constant day in and day out. There need to be a way of them to work around, because sometimes some people has an issue at home, they're not feeling well, or they've got kids, or they have vulnerable person they have to look after. So remote working, it can work. Some people, for example, I'm just going off topic. I'm doing my company, it's a removal company, right? Because usually when I'm doing my job, I talk to the customers. I just wanted to know what they're about, what they do. So this customer, he's a banker. He works for Barclays. So his office is in Canary Wharf, right? So when I asked him, what do you do? Oh, he said, I'm a banker. And so I said, oh, so what have you been doing? I've been working remotely. And he said, okay. I said, how are you finding it? He said, you know what? I find it really good. It's really good because I'm saving a lot of money. I don't have to leave at my house anymore. I can live at my parents' house, just stay in the garage. I said, okay. I said, it's beneficial for you. He said, yeah, definitely. But then each on his own, if you know what I mean. So for me, I can't afford to work at home, which I would love to, but I can't. You know, like maybe with you guys on this platform, you can. You understand? So when this kind of law is in place, I think it will push companies to able to lenient their contracts as well, and make sure that they are kind of like open to ideas, because companies now moving forward, they need to be able to have an initiative, you know, ideas coming in and create, as long as the work is done. My motto on work is, I don't care what you do. If you come to work, don't bring your problems. You come to work, you do your work. You outside work, you bring your problems. As a manager, I will talk to you for your problems. But what I want, as long as you do your work, I'm happy, you're happy, the client is happy. That's my motto at work. I don't care about anything else. If you want to work at home, as long as you can provide to do my work, I'm happy. That's my motto. Well, a lot of companies need to provide that, I think.
I think with making remote working a legal thing, I don't know if I completely agree with that, and I think I have quite a few reservations in how that would work. Because obviously the idea of having like a free commercial market, so to speak, as the one they argue have in the UK, is about allowing businesses to operate as and how they feel sufficient in order for them to progress. Obviously not infringing upon those personal human rights against individuals, like discriminating against race, age, sex, gender, you know, all those sort of things. But in terms of how they intend to work and deliver their work, that should be a decision for them to make. I don't think that should be controlled by law in that particular sense, because it's for businesses to work out and how they budget and how they use their resources effectively. And I don't think the government should impose laws upon that sort of right of businesses as to how they should
I think, yeah, and this is why I asked that question, because I've always thought that that's within the business. Because, for instance, with my workplace mentioning about working from home for the rest of the year or working from home for the next year or so, they have put forward, you have options to order like resources to your house. So, for instance, what do I need in my house in order to work from home? Just having one laptop is not going to be useful enough for the type of work that I do. And obviously I need other amenities. So I think the law is interesting in the sense that as long as, and this is when Ali was talking, I think, Cam, you skewed my mind a bit, but when Ali was talking, what I was thinking was that if the law is in place to say, as part of the options that you have, so you can imagine you go into a workplace and then you have an option to work from home a couple of days. And in order, that option is something that's like a statutory right or something that every worker can have that option to work from home if it's applicable in the type of job that they're doing. Yeah. In a sense that if you are, I don't know, if you are meant to be on the front desk answering calls, is it really practical for us to say that you should work from home? Because how do we make sure that we have a direct line in your house and all those kind of stuff? So it might not be practical. But I was thinking of it in a sense that if your job kind of allows it, then the company has to then provide the resources and the amenities to ensure that you're able to kind of do that. Does that make sense, Cam? Yeah, because I understand the point that you made, but then I was just thinking, if it's maybe illegal, then it's more the onus on the company as well to give that as an option, and not necessarily the option for you to work the whole week from home, but it's an option to say some days you might work from home, and then if you are working from home, we're able to provide you the resources that you need to work from home.
I think I agree. I think like in terms of imposing any law in respect of that, it would have to be, the decision would still have to fall within the discretion of the business. So they still need to have leg room to move around and make those decisions freely. And it's not something that's mandatory. It's mandatory that they have to do.
Yeah, I reckon it's more in terms of every workplace or company should have some kind of remote working assessment towards every role. So in that assessment, they basically see what are the feasible possibilities of this role to work remotely. And if it isn't possible, then it isn't possible. You just have to accept that, as Kojo mentioned. But then if that possibility is there, then it should then force or encourage that company to kind of improve or make that possible for that role, or I don't know, provide the funding or resources required to make that remote working as possible and more flexible for the employee in that position. So yeah, definitely there should be some kind of remote working analysis done by every company for each of their roles, just to see the feasibility of that. And if it is, then it should definitely be looked into more.
Cam, you are.
Do you think that should be legally imposed on firms, though, Mo?
I think maybe the assessment. I think so. Only because there is no real obligation in terms of having to get the person having to do it, but then at least as, let's say, a government, or I don't know, you can have you can refer to some kind of document or something, or request some kind of document from the company, just showing how have they looked into this.
Yeah, no. I definitely understand. As I said, I agree in terms of like giving businesses. I guess obviously in your case, it's a case of they would have to assess it to look at the whether they can facilitate a particular role in terms of remote working. So that assessment would have to take place. But insofar as allowing that particular person to work remotely, do you think there should be? Are you saying that it should be mandatory for them to be able to have, for the firms to have that option as well?
No, I would still try to leave that more in the freedom of the companies. Personally, I think it will.
But what if sorry, Kojo, what if the company has the stock in her old ways? Because my missus, she has a unique role, and her unique role, she can work remotely and still get the job done. But what they are saying to her is that if there's an event, right, how would she tackle her rota? And she said that easy. The day that she's off, she can easily change the rota around and able to accompany the position. And then, but she said to them, but this year anyway, they're not gonna be no event because of what is happening of this COVID-19. The 2 meter distance is still going to be applied, and gathering are still in place. So what does it matter anyway about the event? As long as she's saying, as long as she can do the work and her work is unique, that's the reason why. And what Mo just addressed just now, the assessment is so important because it's just a unique role for each on its own. And also what Kojo and Cam just said is like, for me, yes, companies should have the obligation and opportunity to take their matters in their own hands, right? But if some companies, they can avoid and give the opportunity to individual and employees to work from home, they are saving quite a lot of money. The resources, it can go into the resources. Why you want to go and pay rent to the landlord when you can make another payment and put it more into your company? That's what I'm thinking anyway.
So this is what I was just going to add, because I feel like in regards to this conversation, it will always have to be driven from a capitalist kind of mindset, in the sense of what benefit does the company see in getting from this. And definitely one of the benefit is actual premises, not having the need for these premises. Because we in the Western world, it's always been a capitalist kind of society where when we're seeing the big picture, it's about how do we get more money into the kind of markets, rather than how do we help individuals manage work-life balance, which has always been in the hands of these particular industries or particular companies. So I feel like if it's being driven from that aspect of things, then I could see that those kind of changes happening. But if it's being driven from a sense of individuals and the kind of benefits that they kind of had, then the question is, as a company, if I have a company, then I'm looking at it to see what benefit do I get from this? What benefit do I get from you working from home? Unless I'm using those premises as a way to say, I could get a smaller place, I could pay less and all those kind of stuff. Those kind of would drive those ideas and those decisions. But if I can't see those kind of benefits, then it will be really difficult for that to be imposed on me as a company to do, because I'm like, what value do I get from this kind of stuff? So yes, on one hand, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you shouldn't view the value of your employees, because I personally feel like, I think you mentioned the example as a manager, you don't bring your kind of problems from home, but the kind of teams that I've kind of worked in, or my kind of thinking when it comes to kind of some sort of managerial kind of way, is that if I could help you alleviate your problems, I know you're going to give me your 100%. I have some of my colleagues that I could call now to actually look at some work items, and they will do it. Not because we all work for the same company, but because of kind of the value that we've kind of, the rapport that we've built between us, if you get what I mean. And that goes deeper than just work. So I feel like in order to drive people to really get the best out of them, sometimes you have to alleviate a lot of the problems that they might have, whether it's in the house or whatever it is. You have to understand and try to alleviate that, because then you get the most out of them in a working kind of environment.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, and guys, just also understand in terms of premises, for a lot of businesses, it's not just the whole overhead and stuff. Premises do also support the image and the branding of the business, which is a big vital thing in terms of a lot of businesses. So like, for example, Canary Wharf, you've got the HSBC buildings there. You know, they actually paid and bought the airspace around them so that no other building can be as high as them, so that you can see their HSBC sign up there.
I didn't know that.
A lot of that to do is with branding. Like, companies spend a lot on premises and buildings, not just to facilitate their staff and have somewhere nice, but it is a lot of it also is image. That's why you have big grand lobby area entrances, because when clients come in, they feel that extra bit special, and that is what helps them to execute certain deals before even speaking or providing the benefits and the facts. There's so much that comes in, and those are other factors that are taken into when companies think about premises and things like that.
No, totally agree with that. Especially like Gucci, Prada, and them lot. Obviously, those are retail that in aspect. But then moving forward, there's not going to be no money anymore, cash money anymore. It's going to be cashless. You know what I mean? So I don't know what's going to happen with that kind of side of it as well as a business side. So thank you guys for your thoughts. I just wanted to just talk about the MJ. I'm just starting to catch up. I just wanted to get the whole vibes. I don't mind the spoiler side. You guys can spit it out, and obviously that will give me more the motive to finish it off. But I'm definitely gonna finish it off. So Cam, I know that you spoke to me about MJ. So what gave you the prompt to watch it, if you don't mind?
So yeah, just to put it out, spoiler alert. But I thought this documentary was fantastic, and what prompted me to watch it, as I said, I saw adverts of it online, and different articles were speaking about it, but I just didn't feel the urge to actually want to watch it. And you know, it was me and my wife just chilling, and we just decided to put it on. And from that first episode, I was completely gripped with Micheal Jordan. Obviously, I've always known that he was a big figure in basketball. I don't really follow basketball like that. I might watch 1 or 2 games, but I don't really follow it in any great depth. But seeing what he achieved, and also more like his single-mindedness in terms of like complete utter focus on like achieving a goal. He wasn't really swayed by the glitz and the glam and the money and everything, because even when, you know, they spoke to him certain times, he always said it. He was like, you know, I wouldn't have none of this if it weren't for basketball. All of this starts from basketball, because I would have none of this without it. So it's about perfecting that game and just getting better every time. That's why I liked it. I find it really, really inspirational.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So for me, as I was talking to Coach about it yesterday, talking to Coach about it, it's for example, people give themselves like 100%, but this guy actually gave himself 200%. And no matter what you do in life, always make sure that is your last thing that you're doing. See it as you're doing your last thing. And that's the way he saw when he's playing this game, because there was one scene, sorry about the spoilers, that when they were there was a match they were about to have, and he was looking for all of his buddies. He couldn't find them, and then he found them in this room. All of them was in there. They were drinking, having drugs, I think, and having girls. And he looked in, and then he came in and he looked, and he said, "Oh, like." Then he walked away, and then he said, "This is not what he can imagine for these guys to do." And he just left them, and then he just kept by himself, you know, just stay by himself. And that alone, for me personally, seeing that, you know, when you got a shivering in your body, like, wow, like you actually saw that happening. Like, as a normal person, or as a person that is not motive, they will actually chip in. and starting to do what they wanted to do. But he actually walked away and said, "You know what, this is not for him. He knows what he's there for, and he wants a result." And I like that. That really inspired me. Really, really did. And I'm thinking, wow, you know.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I came across it similar to, actually, I think we broke a bit of the stay at home kind of lockdown self-isolation stuff. I won't tell you how I broke it, but anyway, it transpired that someone mentioned it to us, and then my missus was like, "Oh, everyone's talking about it. Let's watch it." But I think for me, the thing that I take away from it, apart from how much of a great athlete this guy was, and the drive, and some of the decisions that he had to make that Ali mentioned, the drive that Cam mentioned, one thing that really stuck at home with me was always looking for the next step, always looking for the next kind of record to kind of achieve. And even down to the level of opponents that he was playing against. Because I remember there was one point where he mentioned that, you know, like it could be a player that they wanted to sign, and it kind of aggrieved the team in a certain way. So they will go out just to prove everyone wrong that this player is not on the level of the Chicago Bulls or whatever. So he was always looking for the next thing. He was always driving himself. For him to be that great, it wasn't just he just had drive that, oh, I just want to play in the NBA. The minute that he got into the NBA, he had the next drive. I want to be the best player. Then apart from achieving that with MVPs, he had the next drive that on the court, I want to show, I don't care who I'm playing against, I want to show everyone that I'm the best player on the court every time I get to the court. And that's what drove it. So he's always looking at the next step. And I feel like for me, for instance, when I'm looking at my life and I'm looking at some stuff that I could take away from it, it's like he was, and that's the stuff where sometimes people look at you and say, you might not appreciate the stuff that you're doing in your life. It's not that. It's like he was never really, not that he wasn't happy. He was happy with the achievement that he had, but he always had, what's the next thing? What's the next step? And that's what really made him great. Because when you're watching these kind of episodes, how do you drive yourself? Game in, game out, you get to the court and you're putting your best foot forward all the time. There has to be something that's motivating this person. So he was switching his motivations, but it was all centralized around being the best player, regardless of whatever the situation is, regardless of whatever I come up to, regardless of me hearing the commentators talking about, oh, Mo is the new best podcaster there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've been doing this for how long? Okay, I have a show with Mo. I'm going to show Mo who is the boss. Like, these are kind of like the little intrinsic stuff that kind of drove me. No, I just use that as an example.
Yeah,
but these are like kind of like the little intrinsic stuff that drove him to be such a great player. And for me, that was just lovely to see that he was just not happy. It's not about, oh, look at where we are now. It's like, where are we going? What's the next step? And for me, I just love that. That absolutely is like the takeaway I get from that is just that little drive of looking at the next step. The next step, what's there? Oh, we haven't done this. What's there? What's there for me? Kind of stuff. I absolutely love that about the whole documentary and his mind process around that.
Yeah, facts.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, for me, I must admit, I share definitely all the sentiments that you guys have just mentioned, and especially what Kojo was talking about, the whole next step thing. And I think another aspect of the docu-series that makes it so good is how well it's put together.
Yeah.
I mean, just in terms of the whole timeline thing, because the show's called The Last Dance, and that's basically based on their last year as a team together before the coach was leaving, and he called it The Last Dance because they were still going to try and go for the championship. But then it just switches back basically the timeline to Micheal Jordan, how he started, and it does that with each of the other people. And throughout the whole thing, you get the whole journey of, yes, Micheal Jordan was all about going forward, being the best and whatever. But then it also shows his personal growth and how he then started to put the team first and knew in order to win a championship, he's not going to do it on his own. He's going to do it with a team, things like that. And I just thought that whole aspect of how it is a beautiful thing in terms of encouraging people. Anyone watching it will learn it and get some aspirational views from it. And I just think it was just beautifully made. One thing for me I did want to touch on, I don't know if you guys was going to speak about, was just the whole, the political side of it, how Micheal Jordan chose not to engage in it. Maybe this is a spoiler for anyone listening.
Thanks for bringing that. Go on.
He basically made a reference, because obviously he had done the whole Nike Air Jordans and stuff like that. And a lot of people were encouraging for him to support a party member that was for the people, which was a Democratic, I believe. Don't quote me, I might be wrong. But then he made a reference that basically Republicans wear Air Jordans too. So that's why he wasn't going to speak on the matter, because he felt that as a brand or as himself, he reached out to everybody. And by him speaking, he felt he was going to alienate some of his market or something like that. As opposed to talking about what the real community values or issues were. He preferred to just stand back and not make any comment because he felt that he's either way he's still making money or something like that. And I don't know if you other guys saw that bit and what your thoughts were on his stance to that.
Yeah, I saw that bit. I mean, I thought his reasoning was quite fair because he said to his mum, his reason why he didn't publicly, obviously, I know he made that throw a hand comment when he was when he was amongst his teammates, but I feel like he said to his mum, I don't want to speak out because I don't really know this guy, but I'll contribute to his campaign, and that's exactly what he did. He financially contributed to the campaign. Obviously, he was the biggest star in the world. So if he's spoken in support of that politician who was running, there's no telling where that would have gone. There's a very strong chance that man probably would have won. However, I understand it. I get it. I mean, I guess for him to make that comment, though, even if it is just a throwaway comment, it's still, you just don't say the things unless you mean them. You just don't. Somewhere in your mind you thought these sort of things, and I guess Barack Obama commented on it and said that, on another hand, this was someone that was still trying to work out his image, figure out, he's still figuring out certain things, and so for him, he was at a stage where he didn't even really know himself that well and didn't want to just start speaking out for this guy.
Yeah, and I think definitely, and more. I was going to get to that, but good thing that you raised that, because I think when that part kind of came in when I was watching it with my missus, we literally had to pause the video and then sit there and had a quick conversation around that, because I think it's interesting on one hand, because I think preluding to something I said earlier is that I mentioned this whole organization and the selfishness, or sometimes looking at a problem to say it's not affecting me, but I know it's affecting people. So how can I actually add to that? But then he also made a point in there that kind of just made me think, to say that, look, I just saw myself as an athlete. I don't see myself as a role model, which was interesting in a sense, because he did the whole comparison with Muhammad Ali, and he said, look, I'm no Muhammad Ali and all that kind of stuff. So I give him that. On one hand, is that not everyone that's pushing to the limelight should be a role model. Because you're pushing to the limelight, because you're so good in something that you're doing, does that necessarily translate to you being a role model? Obviously, you are a role model to a sense because of the drive, the determination, what you had to give, the sacrifices that you had to give up in order to get there. But sometimes it might just need to stay on that level and nothing else. But then for me, just moving forward to the point that Cam made regarding what he did, regarding that financial support, then it makes me think that there's something else underhand here. So this is how I see it. So you break it down by making off-the-cuff comment, which I don't take anything to it. Sometimes as friends, we joke around, but sometimes, sometimes jokes are loaded with truth. So even Republicans wear Jordans. Okay, cool. And then you had a conversation with your mum, who I think the mum publicly supported the candidate, I think, or something like that anyway. And then you made a financial contribution, but you made a financial contribution without making it publicly known. So the question I have is that, why did you make a financial contribution if, for instance, you're going to say on one hand that, I don't even know this guy and I don't know what he stands for, which I feel like is fair, because it's not like every black person that's pushing to the limelight has black people kind of, what's the word? They have black people's kind of benefits or kind of support, yeah, or they're thinking about to support black people or anything like that. So I take that point. But for me, if you're on one hand saying that, I don't know much about this guy, I don't want to get into politics, I'm just an athlete. But on the other hand, you're giving him financial support. Then the question is, if you are prepared to support this guy, then clearly you know what agenda you're trying to support. So if you're giving in the finance, then why can you not just come out and say that this is something that someone that I kind of like will support, unless it's to do with money and image. So that's the part where I took away, and I'm like, yeah, I get the points that you're making. But for me, if he didn't give any financial support, and he said, look, I don't know this guy from Adam. He's coming out. He's just another black guy. I'm just an athlete. I just want to stay in my corner. I'll be like, yeah, great. I can't say anything, because sometimes people have to be able to make those kind of decisions. But you're saying all that, but you're still giving financial support. Then I'm like, okay, what are you really trying to say here? That was a bit mixed kind of thing for me there around that.
But what I haven't, sorry, go on. Go on more.
I was going to say, yeah, no, I agree with what Kojo is saying, as in his comments and his actions don't really add up or marry up. But then I did kind of think of one talk I was hearing, especially from Dr. Umar Johnson, in terms of how there's people out there that will support the community, but on their own financial element, but not necessarily be publicly out there on a stance on the front line or what and stuff like that. And it's and the reason why they are reluctant to do it on that kind of aspect is more so that they can still keep that finance going, creation going, so then they can then still finance more and more things. That's not to say, I'm not saying that was Micheal Jordan's stance or element in that sense. I really don't know what his thing is. But if he is on that aspect, then I totally get it. I think that's good. But then I feel if he was at the time, because he could have changed over the years, was just purely focusing on his self-image or whatever, I kind of feel it's his own prerogative. I mean, who are we to really say anything about that?
Okay. What I want,
I guess the whole idea, just to chime in, I guess the whole idea is that if he was focused on his image and how he was portrayed and looked at, then in some way, shape, or form, you know, he always knew he was a role model, even if he didn't want to be one. He, to some degree, you can't say he didn't see himself as a role model. He would have, because you cared about how you were presented to people.
But
true.
To sum up on that side, guys, was it right for him to do that though?
I think personally, and I just look, I think sometimes we're too judgmental. So I do take on board what Mo just said, that sometimes it is up to the person's own prerogative. But I think black people, what we need to understand is that not everyone that's pushing into the limelight is a role model. Isn't it? For me, it's a role model in a sense of the drive and some of the stuff that we kind of mentioned. That's really what I take away from this. That was just like a little blemish on his kind of thing. And on one hand, as I said, for me, if he literally just came out on this episode and said, you know what, I'm just an athlete, I'm just playing my thing, I'm not into politics. My mom was into it, but I didn't want anything to do with it. I'll be like, yeah, fair enough. Like, you know, you don't want to get into politics. Not everyone could be like Muhammad Ali, because Muhammad Ali suffered when he made those decisions. You know, he will always be remembered and he will be revered like more than Jordan because of him getting into politics and fighting for people's rights. But not everyone could be Muhammad Ali. So people are allowed to make those choices. I think it would have been a bit more, I'd have been a bit more susceptible with the explanation he gave if he kind of gave it on that hand. But then on the other hand, even with what Cam has just mentioned, that you basically knew you were a role model, you were looking at your kind of image to not taint your image, or you thought that it might taint your image or whatever not. So you made a decision accordingly. Okay, cool. But then obviously regarding what Mo said as well, if some people want to push financially, but then in the public eye, they don't want to come out and say it, then I wonder, you being a role model, like how, I don't know, man. I just feel like sometimes I'm a bit too judgmental with it. So I feel like, you know.
Let me move forward quickly on that as well. I don't know if you guys noticed about the coach. Something about the coach wanted to leave. So how did that roll up? Did you guys aware of that? There was something about the coach. The coach was there for 5 years.
Didn't want to leave.
I know the general manager was trying to get him out. That's what it was.
Yeah, because he wanted a new changes, no?
Yeah. But then the general manager did a lot of good things for that team. He put that team together.
It did.
Yeah,
Scott,
no.
Are you talking about the old one? You're talking about the new one.
Sorry, what you mentioned?
Because there's a new one. I mean, there's an old one that was there for 5 years that they won consistently, right? But
you're talking about the coach. You're talking about the coach when Jordan, when it was Jordan in his early years. You're talking about that one.
Yeah. So Jordan said
Phil
that he will leave as well if
Phil
he
Jackson
leaves. No.
No, this is for Phil Jackson. This was the coach they had in like that period where they just won so much.
Yeah.
And I think just to add to
MJ.
And
hello.
I'm here.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that general manager, obviously there was a bad taste.
MJ said that.
Sorry, Mo. Do you want to? Hey, sorry,
No,
Ali. You want to carry on? I was going to get back on that general manager.
Continue.
Yeah, there was a bad taste that was left in the viewer's mind, didn't it? When you look at that general manager and how he was portrayed in the whole series. But for me, the fundamental point that he was trying to make was that organizations win kind of championships, not players, not just. And it's true because it's not just the players on the field. It's a whole kind of thing that has to come together for everything to work. And I think he wasn't given much kind of, he wasn't painted in a positive light in some aspect of the documentary. But when you look at it, he actually assembled that team. It was his vision. He put Phil Jackson in place in the first place. So a lot of the little kind of dominoes, a lot of things that you need to put in place in order for it to be a well-oiled machine, he kind of put it in place. And I think like sometimes even when we talk about movements, moving little puzzle here and all those kind of stuff, that's sometimes what we lack within our kind of communities. Someone to kind of put this overall arcing kind of structure together in order for people to excel. And I feel like this is something he did brilliantly. Like he gave them the bedrock in order to actually get to the kind of the heights that they got to. Obviously, it's not like every decision that this guy made was perfect, but I feel like he should get a bit more actual kind of clout and praise as well, because I feel like when you watch the documentary and you watch how they got to the last dance in the first place, he really put everything. He put everyone in those positions to make it happen. I'm not sure.
It's his ego that let him down.
Yeah, but it's his ego that got him in the first place.
He was his own downfall. Nobody else made his downfall. It was him himself.
But it was his ego that got him there in the first place, though. It was his ego that made me.
Referring to the coach, Paul?
No, I'm not referring to the coach at all. I'm referring to the general manager.
Okay.
No, his ego never got him. I don't think his ego got him there.
Mate, he made certain decisions, before, what's his name?
Those weren't based
Dennis
on his
Rodman.
ego, though.
Sorry?
Those decisions he made before weren't based on his ego.
What parts would you say is the ego? Because if his mantra is that the organization wins championships, and so for him, he doesn't just see as one player wins championship. He sees as the whole collective coming together. And the point I'm trying to make is that he saw that future. Hence the reason why he assembled that kind of team together. And he put Phil Jackson in place in the first place. So yes, on one hand is to say that, and some of the decisions that he made was really cutthroat decisions that at the time people didn't understand. It was only after the results those decisions kind of gave. Hence why people would be like, yeah, it was a good decision. But at that time, people could not understand that decision. Because even to get Phil Jackson in, he had to sack the old coach.
But you know what? I think when he made that comment, sorry, Kodjo, do you want to finish? Sorry.
No, it's fine. You can go on.
Yeah, when he made that comment about organizations win championships, I think the way Jordan saw it is like, yeah, there's different cogs in that organization that can help it win championships. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how you play on that field. You can still put, a great team together with great players, and it might not necessarily work. Obviously, it's all the little, as you said, it's the little pieces that create that domino effect, from the general manager to the coach to the players. It all streams down to that very thing. But at the end of it all, I think the way it was interpreted to Micheal Jordan is that this guy, Jerry Krause, was just saying literally it's just organizations that win it. I think he was trying to exclude the importance of what the team had done. And I think that's what he probably didn't like or take very well. It just seemed like a whole dismissive thing. And then even when you look around how some of the other players were treated, because I think you look at Scottie Pippen, with his contract and everything and how he was dealt with, they kind of took the piss with him.
But really did they really though? Like, did they really? Did they? Like, he signed a contract.
No, they didn't. Yeah, he signed it.
Like seriously, sometimes we look at it and I can understand what you're saying. I'm watching it with my wife and we're like, this guy's the second best player in the NBA. Where is the onus on that? Look, okay, now I get it. I understand on some point they took the piss in it, but on other aspect of it, I saw you signed a contract in it, like, you know, like, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm
And
a
it's
bit.
not like he was tricked
guys.
into signing it. He felt that because of his injury problems, he might not last. So he felt at that time that a long-term thing was actually in his own personal benefit.
No.
So it was his mistake. Like, it wasn't anybody else. As a club or business, you're thinking, yeah, that's a great deal, isn't it? We got someone secured in. He's really good. Blah blah blah. We're gonna get our money's worth out of
course,
him.
yeah.
They did. They got more than what they wanted.
All right, guys, moving forward, we're trying to, is a spoiler. Myself need to finish watching it, and most of all, our listeners and our followers probably watching it as well. It's in Netflix. Just wanted to wrap up, guys. Just each one of what we just all spoken about. I just wanted to get a quick wrap up. I'll start off anyway. So, for my general understanding of what we just talked about, we are talking about the legal of remote working. Well, there's a pros, there's a cons, and it's probably each company on its own has to implement this idea as more addressed. Is probably analyze or assess the situation. If your role is a unique and a key role whereby you don't have to be in an office, then perhaps you can work from home. But as coach mentioned, if your role is a receptionist, you can't obviously not work from home. You know, you have to work in an office. And then we have to look into also the commercial side, into businesses like key businesses like Prada, Gucci, or banks, HSBC. You know, sometimes even Tesco will buy their own premises, for example, making sure that that's the image, the brand for their own company. So we really need to look into these factors. And then we just tap into also MJ, Micheal Jordan. For me personally, I haven't watched it as much, so I can't comment that much. But what I've watched so far, he has definitely inspired me. And I'm kind of like similar to the same way that he thinks, because when I'm doing something, regardless of anything, for me, timing, I never make sure that I play with time, because time, I cannot get it back. And for me, I put that principles to me, whatever I do, make sure that I do it. If I'm going to say I'm going to do something with someone, I make sure that I put my words into it. And inspired, for me, Micheal Jordan, even though I haven't finished watching it, which I will, is a role model for me, in the fact that if I would have had that kind of opportunity when I was young, I would have been very happy. But it's not too late for me. And so, yeah, that's what I think, summing up from my side of it.
Yeah.
So you go, Kaja.
Yeah, just touching up on some of the points regarding, you kind of did it quite well, Ali, actually. It was rolling off your tongue regarding some of the conversations we've had. In regards to the whole remote working, I think it's interesting if companies will kind of give some sort of resources available for their workers to have the option to work from home if it's kind of like applies to the specific position that they're doing. I think that's what I'd like to wrap up on that. And I guess the last point around Micheal Jordan is I didn't really care much about Micheal Jordan, in all honesty. But watching that kind of documentary, the only thing I take away, and I think it's all positives for me, there was only one thing that we kind of mentioned around the politics, which I feel like sometimes, he should have done a bit, but just putting that aside, I feel like his drive to always reach for the next step is definitely something I'll be taking away from that, because I feel like that was just brilliant, just to have someone that was so driven and determined to reach some incredible heights that could not be foreseen at that time. It's just great to really hear that and share that story in that sense.
I guess the law on remote working, as I said, it is an interesting way of trying to set the pace for the future of the working industry, and a massive change in the landscape of what it means to work in modern society. But I think I have reservations about how that law could function. And as I said, I don't know if it's I don't think it's necessary to impose that law on businesses. I think they should be given the right to, you know, decide whether someone in a particular role can work remotely. However, I guess that can be toned down slightly, and there are other aspects you can focus on, like possibly making it, you know, legal to at least make an assessment as to whether that role could work remotely, and possibly give the company the discretion to give that person the option to work remotely from within that role. So there are ways it could work, if it, you know, even if it just tackles sort of a narrow part of remote working as opposed to the whole thing. With the Micheal Jordan documentary, as I said, I thought that was fantastic. I thought it was great looking at Micheal Jordan's upbringing, and what I also found interesting was how his parents, you know, how he was raised and where it all started from, how his parents put him into, you know, sports, because they said they didn't want he and his siblings to be idle, and the interest just grew from there. And it, you know, says a lot to how, I guess, you know, you could parent you know, your children, or try and get them into something interesting or interactive from a very young age to keep them, you know, to keep them focused whilst they're growing. And on top of that, I also found interesting sort of getting a snapshot of the other players as well on the Chicago Bulls team. You know, Dennis Rodman, I remember when I was younger, and I used to always see him in the media, and he always looked nuts, just the way he looked. But I think what was interesting was to sort of get somewhat of a bit more of an insight into him as an individual, and how his experience was playing on that team, as well as Scottie Pippen's too. But I'm definitely impressed with it. I think it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. What I do like about it is, as I said, Micheal Jordan's drive to just sort of want to be the best. And definitely what you said, Kojo, on, you know, once he reached one goal, he set a new goal and focused on that. And it was a case of consistently creating new goals, new things to achieve. Although it was a single mind of being the best basketball player ever, it was broken down into different chapters, and that's how he looked at it. So yeah, fantastic documentary, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it.
Yeah, no, I think it's all excellent, all the things that you guys have mentioned. Just to close off, where do I start? In terms of working from home, that definitely every business, company, whatever, has to have some kind of assessment for working remotely from home in each role, and then leave it to the business as to what they would do. But I feel the assessment needs to be done, especially with some of these old-fashioned businesses that have been around for hundreds of years and have got certain things in place and aren't moving with the times and the possibilities and the resources available that can help staff, individuals, and the business. So yeah, the assessment, 100%, I think that should be enforced on every business. They should all do it. How they look forward or carry out or implement it is their own freedom, but the assessment has to be done initially in the beginning, because you don't know what you don't know, basically. And the MJ documentary, I have to say, it was fantastic. It was beautiful imagery, how it was designed, how it was put together, the drive, everything. I think MJ is a great man. I had no idea how great he was. Definitely, I do feel with all his financial resources, he could definitely do more for the community. But then I don't really know what he has done or is actually doing at the moment. So yeah, who am I to say? I do also think from watching it, it's definitely a great example for any people in our community watching it, in terms of the whole Scottie Pippen story, that you should never doubt yourself and you should believe in yourself. And because he doubted himself, he sold himself short. And by doing that, you can get taken advantage of and used. Someone like Micheal Jordan, he had full confidence in himself and he didn't sell himself short. So that's why he never had that problem. Two people in the exact same position, environment, working place, but just because of the two different beliefs and characteristics and ideologies, you see how one took the other and one took one in another direction. So I do love the show in the sense where it gives you another story of self-doubt and disbelief, and how that can be your own self-downfall, and we shouldn't allow that to happen to ourselves. But other than that, honestly, I think it's definitely a great episode. A lot of things happening, and a lot for us to all learn from.
Well said. Thank you so much for that. The last comment, Mo, especially, very, very good what you just mentioned, how you brought it up, how you summed it up, that never sell yourself too quick, you know, no matter what condition you are in, even though it's tough, even though it's very hard, always seem to think positive. And at the end, regardless, especially your hard work, your sweat, you will always have a result, and your result, you'll be laughing. So well said. And that's most of us happens. It allows most of us to happen, and especially within our generation, and especially for the people of colors. Thank you guys for everyone, for our friends as the members. You guys have summed up your words is very impressive and is well input. For our listeners and our followers, thank you once again. This is another episode that is really fantastic, and please do listen, share your comment. And we are London Perspective Podcast, and to share your information, we've got an email, which is londonperspective@gmail.com, and you can catch us on Instagram, LDN Perspective, and also Twitter. So please do mention anything that you're not aware of or you're sure of. Have a debate with us. We would really love to. And thank you for listening for today, and much more to come. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.